Hello everyone, can everyone hear me? Okay. It's 5:39. I'm calling this meeting to order. The first action item is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion? Second. The third thing on the is the consent of the agenda. Is there we moving to approve the consent for for our last meeting agenda? A second. Uh, the second is the approval of minutes for our last meetings. Is there a motion? A second. Uh, Four, we have now announcements. I want to welcome the Dorcas and also Camp Rise for joining our health and awareness committee. Dorcas works with the refugee community and also do a lot of services with the refugee youth. And also we have Francois. He is one of the directors for the RAPEM. They're gonna talk about themselves and the different programs that they do. Maybe Francois want to start, then Dorcas can go next.
Hi everyone, my name is Francois. I'm here today representing Camp Rise and as well as Refugee Youth Power Movement. They're both two branches that kind of pretty much go together. Camp Rise caters to the refugee community of children who are in elementary and up to high school. And it's a 1 month program in the summer where they are taught some reading, some writing, and as well as some mathematics. Throughout the day, there's also recess, lunch, and breakfast. And they also do go to field trips to places that are either commonly known or places that they've never heard of. We love taking them to either like the aquariums, the museum. The park is always something that's enjoyable in the summer, so that's somewhere we love to take them as well. The water parks are always very fun for them. And on the last day of our of the summer, we very much do a big celebration where each class has prepared something, whether it's a song, a dance, or even videos. There's people who have done acting as well on the stage, and it's just a place where all of our friends and family come together and see how much fun we have throughout the summer. And Refugee Youth Power Movement caters to our refugee youth who are either entering high school or in their age range to be in high school or college, but are currently out of work. And so Refugee Youth Power Movement exists for 2 weeks, and what we do is we help them with the adult transitions of an adult in America, understanding those transitions of getting into the adulthood, and that just includes understanding how to find a job, college navigation, maintaining your well-being physically and mentally, and as well as understanding like growth and fixed mindsets. So we hope to also help them grow personally in their lives, and we also we run for 2 weeks in the summer, and we also do stipend them for coming for those 2 weeks. So they not only leave with some information that's going to help them throughout their days or coming days, we also do try to help them with a little stipend for coming and giving us their time. Those are the two current programs that I'm representing, and we are honestly open to any collaborations and any other advice that would be helpful to the growth of these two programs. And once again, thank you tonight, Jude, for giving me the floor, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So welcome to the Health and Awareness.
Thank you.
And now we have Dorcas.
So good evening. Thank you for having us. My name is Gloria Bergmans. I'm a youth case manager with Dorcas. I run the middle school after school program at Gilbert Stewart for refugee and newcomer immigrant youth. So just a little overview of our program. We just started in January. So it's been about 3.5 months that we've been doing the program. We meet Tuesdays and Thursdays after school from 3 until 5. So it's a program where we offer academic support as well as some social emotional learning. And then we always end the program with soccer. Because I've learned quickly that these kids have a lot of energy after being in school all day. And soccer just kind of transcends culture and language, and it just really bonds the students. And I might refer to them as boys my boys because the group ended up being all male students. So I affectionately refer to them as my boys. So what I did with the program, kind of starting from scratch, I broke each week down into a different theme. So different themes we've discussed is healthy relationships with self and family and peers. We've discussed healthy coping mechanisms. We talked about living in the present and being mindful, and we discussed meditation. We also talked about looking towards the future. And that was the night Gene came and he spoke to the boys about what his experience was like as a refugee and how he overcame some adversities, so that they could be inspired by his story and think bigger. And then we had a therapy dog come. We had a music therapist come, talking about different ways that we can cope, whether it be petting a dog or listening to music. And then in the upcoming weeks, we're having a representative come from the Wilbury Group, which is a theater group in town, if you're not aware, and we're going to do some drama therapy. I just really wanted to have a broad spectrum of activities so that maybe one doesn't hit well for them. Maybe the music is not like their thing, or they don't like dogs, but maybe drama ends up being something that they really feel empowered by. We're going to talk about their migration story during these workshops, these drama workshops, and maybe acting out the events that took place to get them to America will be therapeutic for them. I don't know. I wanted to expose them to a lot of different therapies and different social emotional learning opportunities to help them cope and thrive while also adapting to the U.S. So I printed out. I apologize. I forgot to ask for copies. If you want to just do every other person or a group, just like an example of the curriculum I've been using. I'm not a teacher by any means. I'm actually in school to get my master's in social work.
We're hiring.
I would
I was just doing my program, actually.
Oh my God!
Not making me confused.
With a newcomer program comes out.
Yes, I would love that.
Can't take off from us. Come on.
Sorry. Yeah. So, we do have a couple of goals and objectives for the program. One being to strengthen their academic capacity. So, I start every day with 30 minutes of homework time. And Benjamin can speak to the high school program. He does more homework out. Middle school kids don't have as much. So we do about 30 minutes of academic support, and then we do about 30 minutes of social emotional learning before we head to the gym to play soccer. So sorry, I meant to mention that. So we wanted to strengthen their academic capacity. We wanted to empower them by promoting positive social emotional programming and to provide some case management too. So I want to help them find the resources that they need and refer them to places that they might not know about. One week we took a field trip to the library, and all the kids got library cards. The librarian spoke about the different services the library has to offer. So that was really eye-opening for them. They all wanted to play video games on the computer, but that's okay. I mean, if I can get them in the library, maybe they'll check out a book every once in a while. That's okay. We also went to the West End Recreation Center, and they found out about the programs they have to offer. So just trying to open their eyes to what the community has to offer and different resources available to them. So that's another goal, is just some of the case management. That's the case management piece, just the referrals for finding the resources. So that's what we've been doing, what I've been doing in the middle school program so far. But our priority next year is to build on the current after-school programming by capturing the refugee and the newcomer immigrant youth during their academic school day. So we want to ensure that we are meeting them where they're at. We realize that not everyone can stay for an after-school program. Some kids have to help parents with younger siblings, or some of them have to work. Some of them have sports, and they're in other extracurricular, which is great. But we want to still provide services that they need. So we would love to create partnerships with different schools where there's high population of refugee and newcomer immigrants, so that we can provide more services to them during the academic school day. So that's kind of what we're looking toward. We would love to also expand the program to another middle school and another high school. That's kind of our vision for the next fall. We'd love to be in 2 middle schools, maybe do one Monday, Wednesday, one Tuesday, Thursday. One Monday, Wednesday at one school, and a Tuesday, Thursday at a different school. So that's what we're looking for next year. So I'll let Benjamin talk about the high school program.
Hey everyone, I'm Benjamin, and they run the program at Central High School, which is a school I actually graduated from in 2016. So it's nice to be back where it all started. So it's similar to what she's doing at middle school, but like she said, these are kids that are already 15 and 14. So it's a little difficult to run the program, and they're more looking for academic support because most of them, they're ready to go to college, and most of them don't have the time to go home and do the homework because they have other jobs, they have to help the parents. So when they stay these 2 hours at Central High School, they're able to finish the homework, and when they go home, they have time to play with their family members, do what they have to do. Again, remember, we work from Dorcas International Institute. If you don't know about the agency, it's one of the largest agencies with several refugee immigrants here in the state. So that's why it's critical that actually we make sure this program is well programmed, because we understand that these kids, they actually, most of them, they don't get a chance to go in a school back home in their country. So coming here and then you're already in high school, you don't know how to write in your own language. And now you have to write an essay in English, that is not easy. As a refugee in the night, and the refugee here might be able to understand it. So it's not easy. And like she said, that's why it's critical to work with you. I'm not sure if some of you might be the ones to make the decisions. That's why we need to be able to do it. Because most of them, they have to go home right away. And some of them, they're not ready to talk to their counselor, but they might be ready to talk to me because their parents know me from Dorcas. They saw me as soon as they came to the airport, so they feel more comfortable to come to us. And we have to make sure they actually advocate for themselves. So it's not like we're there and they can't go to talk to their counselors, because some of them, like she said, some of us, we're now certified to be counselors, we're now certified to be nurses. So we're just there to make sure they understand it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to go to your teacher, it's okay to go to a nurse. So that's basically what we're doing. We're not taking away what other people are doing. We just want to add it to it, teach them how to advocate for themselves, and pretty much do a case management. We usually refer them to jobs, clothing collaboratives, food pension, stuff like that. So it's not just academic, being essential. Because Central in the job, they have really great teachers. So we understand that they have counselors, but again, we get to help also more stuff like case management and other services. Pretty much that's it. Thank you for the floor. If you have any question, we don't give you too much information, so if you have any question, please ask away.
Thank you so much. Welcome to Health and Wellness Committee. Mr. Kim, do you have any question?
Yes, excellent programs in terms of the middle school support group. How many boys are in your group at the current time?
So just yesterday I had 12 in attendance. So their very first day was 0, which I expected. But it's kind of grown over the course of the last few months. And what I'm most prideful of is no one has stopped coming. So I feel happy about that. And we've been doing some communication with parents too. I think that's another important piece of this, is to get them more involved in the kids' learning experience. And so, we have all the parents of the kids in the program actually attended the parent-teacher conferences this most recent time, which I was really happy about. So that was a big push that we were doing, was to get parents more involved, and having them attend the parent-teacher conferences was a sense of pride for us.
So for these kids and the parents, they still adopted. Most of them they got in November and at the beginning of this year. So most of them they are Christian, do have to pay money, but the transportation is safe. So now we're getting more comfortable as we're adopting in the country. So we're hoping to get more
So there's room for expansion with the number of students that you can support.
Right, as we answer those questions, like, yeah, it's free, we don't charge you, and we're be able to give you a bus bus. So basically, that's one thing that we're making sure they understand. It's safe, and a lot of kids in America, they stay after school. It's not just them. No offended that you have to stay so I can help you. A lot of kids stay after school. So.
Do you use some of the kids in the best program that have to be newer kids?
So it's actually, I saw that today, it started today. I've been helping this kid do much longer. And when I went to pick up my pen, one of my students was helping a friend already. And I was like, okay, I'm stay about, it's nice, So as they get comfortable, and most of them speak the same language, story diary. So they're gonna keep getting closer and closer, and hopefully they're gonna keep coming, like she's saying. None of them have stopped. So we're hoping that we're gonna give them a room to grow and support each other.
Do you work with registration office at all?
Morgan, one of our colleagues, she's the youth advocate, and she does the registration. So she works with the registration office in Providence and helps parents through that process of getting into schools.
They actually will come to the school also, like with someone from Dorcas will come with a parent on like the first day of school to help with the transition. We at the Office of Multiple Learners have a partnership. My goodness, it's been so many years we've been partnering with Dorcas, and we have regular meetings with them to support. In the two schools that are at now, it's because they house our newcomer programs. So that's why they've chosen those sites. So.
We just added multilingual learner was originally for our evaluation team to support building out a comprehensive assessment system for our multilingual learners. That was culturally and linguistically appropriate, and we've shifted a little bit to supporting registration as well. And so she comes with a wealth of knowledge and experience. She grew up in Providence. She just started this week. She's super excited. And we have another social worker this year who's been at registration for a couple days a week, and it has made such a difference. So I was just curious and hoping that maybe we can make that connection, and maybe you guys can present to our social workers and psychs as well.
Great.
I'm actually interested in the letter to future me. And can you tell us a little more about what they're writing about? Is it in the near future?
Yeah, so I just had them kind of write down some goals, like 5-year, 10-year goals, and then use that as kind of a baseline for writing a letter to their future self. And, all of them want to go to college. Like that's a big dream for a lot of these students. And so a lot of them wrote their letter to their future self that they hope to be a college graduate, and they all want a big house, a big car, a nice car, and a family. So they're very sweet.
Yeah, it's not my idea, but I loved it because I remember happening to me, my teacher asked me the same back in 2014. And she was like, write a story. It would be why I was in transition from Rwanda to the United States. And for some reason, I found it like so many years ago, and then I was like, no, I didn't write this. And it's almost like English. It was just like, it was bad, but I'm glad she did it. And I don't know, I didn't tell the story, but yeah, thank you for doing that. I'm sure they're going to like it. So,
I have lots of pictures.
Can I just ask a question? Are the students from some of the locations at Central for High School and Public School, but you get students from others, or is it primarily from the?
So they have to be from Central because, again, we don't have permission to have other students coming to Central. And again, the transportation wise will be tough. But as we work with other agencies and work with the school, we're hoping if you can have other students from this school that are will program ready, they can come if they can provide their own transportation. Or if you can provide, because I think it will be the safety concern having other students from the school coming to Central. But again, it's a new program, so we're hoping we're going to work with all of you and other agencies and see how we can do.
we had specifically chosen those sites because that's where our newcomer program is. We have very specific programs at those two schools, and the majority of our students attend both of those schools. However, we've seen a huge influx with our newcomer students at the high school level. We've probably, at some point, I want to say, a couple months ago, I looked, we had doubled what we were last year, this year. So the plan was originally to kind of keep them, at the same location, but they've really started to really be assigned all around the district. But the majority of the particular program is at those two sites, and this is a new program, which has been, great for us. So hopefully, we can think about, how we can grow it for the upcoming year.
Thank you for that explanation. I had been to an event at Hope High School last week and had heard that there were quite a few there now.
Yeah, we had
So
more
that-
than
Yeah. Thanks for that explanation.
Thank you guys for that.
Thank you guys. Again, welcome to the Health and Wellness Committee. Next we have reports, health curriculum revision updates, and Sandy will be leading.
Before I do that, I just want to introduce Julie Lombardi, my Executive Director of Student Support. She's here, so welcome Julie to the Health and Wellness. So just so everyone is aware, Julie's going to be transitioning and supporting the group, not because I'm going anywhere, but I just have many departments that I'm overseeing, so I feel like in order to really do a comprehensive job, I want to make sure that someone is completely dedicated. So Julie, starting next year, because I won't give it up until then, but Julie next year will be starting, and we'll be doing check-ins and whatnot, but Julie will be mostly supporting with, kind of all the duties and whatnot that I do. So she's going to be coming to the meetings and attending those to kind of see how we run things. And of course, Natalie and Jana will continue on maybe in different capacities, but for right now, so that's why Julie is going to be attending. So what I wanted to do is share with you an update. So I think we've been talking a lot about it this year, about the health curriculum being revised based on some changes that were done at RIDE, and I think it was the spring of last year. So we have shared that the leaders, the health leaders, teacher leaders have been looking at the guidelines that have gone through RIDE in the spring and looking at our current curriculum and making some updates. So I just wanted to give you a very brief idea of what some of those changes have been, just to kind of give you a little idea of what they've done thus far. So I'll start, I asked Donna's team to just kind of give me some topics that they have been changing, and just so that way we can just get a little idea. So for the K-5 curriculum, they are now during Q1 doing Ready, Set, Grow. They're talking a lot about in the first quarter personal health and their goals and their development. And then in Q2, they're concentrating a lot on their mental and emotional health. In Q1, first they're doing the health, and then the second piece is the mental health piece. In Q2, they're doing introduction to overall wellness. So for the first half, they're doing personal health, so talking about things like health and physical activity. And then in the second quarter, they're talking about sexuality and family life, so like family and social health. In Q3, they're doing healthy lifestyles. So for the first half, they're doing nutrition education, which is probably one of their most favorite units that they do. They're also doing environmental health. They're doing a lot with recycling and whatnot. And then Q3, they're doing substance abuse, alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. And then the last quarter is personal safety, so injury prevention, and then consumer health. And I think that's where they're doing a lot of like reading the labels and advertisements, things of that nature. For secondary, we've made a lot of changes there. So we have added, I think last year, many of you may remember, the Nathan Bruno Act, we talked about that and adding a suicide prevention piece to the curriculum. So that has been added. Also, social media and cyberbullying has also been added. And then also healthy relationships with teenage dating violence. Another thing that we have heard loud and clear, matter of fact, the superintendent has been doing a student group, and they have been sharing a lot around concerns around vaping. It is something that we've also been seeing and hearing a lot. The use of vaping has increased, so they have added that also to the curriculum. They are doing dangers of vaping. They're also doing injury prevention, so they're doing hands-only CPR. They're doing PPE universal precautions, and they're also doing abdominal thrust. So in case they're, in the lunchroom or anywhere, and someone is choking, and then some basic first aid and emergency responses. Also, they added a new unit in grades 9th and 10th around, like I mentioned, the Mental Health Bruno Act. The sexual orientation unit was also added to grades 9, 10, and 11. It had already existed in 12, so we're bringing it down to the lower grades. Vaping again was added. They also were just changing some goals in grade 12. They always talked about emotional mental health, however, they're incorporating that suicide prevention piece. And then they're also doing a little bit of changing in CPR in grade 12 to the hands-only piece. So those are just some very high leverage topics and things that have been changed. And I just wanted to share that with everyone because I know there's been a lot of questions around it, and I know some of the work at the working groups have been centering around this. It's not complete by all means, but those are some of the things that they've been working on. So I wanted to share that with everybody. And I believe Donna attended the Healthy Relationship Group and may have shared some of that already, because I know a lot of the work you all have been doing in that group has been some recommendations based on the curriculum. So,
Second, is there any question?
No, it's a great program. It's very expansive. In terms of the safety, the personal safety, that's consumer reading labels and what else is comprised of that?
I'm not completely sure. I don't know, Rosemary, do you know anything about that piece of the last one that they added? I have not had a chance to review it myself yet because they're still revising it. So I'm not sure. I know it was around like looking at, like advertisements and things like that. But for some of the specifics, I don't have it yet because they're still in the process of completing it. So I haven't had a chance to revise it myself. But I will come back to that as soon as they're done with it. It's taken them a long time. They're doing it as we've given them some early release days from school, which we don't like to do. But they have, been doing some full day sessions. They do a lot of work outside of the day also. But as you can tell with the list I gave, it's been a lot. So.
Well, and I would just add that, not knowing the specifics, but the health education standards, so when Sandra first talked about the changes at RIDE, we revised the health education framework and updated the standards, and so the first standard is content specific, so all of the topics that Sandra talked about are mandated instructional outcomes. And then the others, 2 through 8, are behavior. So it's like analyzing influences in the media, in television, digital,
Social
those
media.
kinds of things. Decision-making skills, relationship skills. So it's a focus on the skills, and then the content is woven through that.
I have one question. Once the revision is done, we can send it to board members. But my question is, this curriculum, can parents access it?
So
online?
parents have, it's not online, so that's been something we've been discussing a lot as the group. None of our curriculum currently right now is online, but once we're done completing it, we can discuss about how we want to put it out for families. But absolutely, I've already talked to the parent, the FACE office, excuse me, let me say that, the FACE office, in getting a presentation during the parent university, so that way they can present exactly what the curriculum is, and anybody's invited that can attend that.
Yeah, let's make sure so that we are prepared for that, as you said. So there goes-
Always, we always have that, yeah.
Because it's important, our parents know what we teach our kids. So,
Absolutely.
is there any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Sydney, you mind talking a little about like how the changes are gonna be implemented? Like, is it gonna be starting in the fall? Is it gonna be like the following year? Like, how is that gonna get rolled out? And like, what do you?
Yeah, so
your
Donna
thoughts
and
about
I
that?
are still project planning that. I have to wait till they're actually fully done with the curriculum first. And I know a lot of the working groups have been also giving suggestions, so they'll have to go back and probably do some, looking at those suggestions, going back, maybe do some revisions. So that's one. Two, just reviewing it. I'll have to, review it with cabinet. So we are getting closer to the end of the year. I don't want to rush them because I want to make sure that they, they're being comprehensive, which you can tell that they are. Like they really are being very thoughtful. The other piece is that we need to update a lot of our resources for health, like, looking at some of textbooks and things that we had are, older. So we're also, I have gotten some money aside so that way we can purchase some materials and the feedback from the teacher leaders and the PE health teachers have been, they want to go digital. I don't know, I just like a good book, but I can't get them to get a book. They just went digital. So it's fine, I mean, either way, but they really want to have like more digital copies for, even for like kids to be able to access. So right now, Donna is having them compile the wish list of like, what is it that they want? What are they looking for? So that way we'll know to move forward in looking for something to match that. So we have all these pieces in place, and then once they're done with that full rewrite, then we will discuss how to implement it. But if it gets done soon, my thought would probably be summer train the health and PE teachers. What we don't want to do is just say, here everybody, here's a new week, right? So we'll need to do some training with them to go over what it looks like, and then roll it out hopefully for next year. I don't know if the digital materials would be ready to go, because usually the board takes July off, and so we usually have a little lapse, and that usually will have to go. I think they do. I don't know if they will, but sometimes they do. So probably those materials might get pushed back a little bit more, but if everything goes well, hopefully I'll be able to roll it out next year. But I can share that when it gets a little closer. Donna was also out for a little bit, so that'll be something we're going to talk about in the coming weeks.
Two things. One, I think before we roll out, like just conversational scheduling, because I think that's like one of the biggest barriers that we talked about is like, what does it actually look like when it's implemented? Like, how to train minimum time the schedule, because it often won't happen sometimes because of the schedule, and it's not to anybody's own intent, but that's that there's not always space to have those conversations and kind of troubleshooting.
Yeah. We would have to be included in the guidance that we include, like all the other content, because that ultimately the principals at the building are the ones who are the master schedules of their building. So what we'll say is, state law says PE has to happen. We tell them, to make sure they're including this. This would, as health should be, whatever it is, 30, 45, 45 minutes, whatever the mandate is. So we usually give them that guidance, and then they create their schedules based on that, just like they would for any content. But yeah, we definitely would be adding that to the guidance that normally they would get. Yeah.
And then the other thing was just that it's just such a good opportunity to include the social emotional learning curriculum materials instead of finding different ones. If we're looking at the lessons that are specific to mental and emotional health, what are some of the curriculums, or I really love the word curriculum, but like resources that we utilize across tiers to teach self-awareness, self-management, and how can we kind of, as social workers, psychologists, school counselors, Gina and I were talking a lot about that. We use second step, zones of regulation, Quaver. There's a lot of different things that are evidence-based kind of for SEL skills that would be nice to just collaborate around, so that we're all kind of using the same language and materials.
And I know we've talked about too, we would love to get the teams to start working together to do some of these lessons. So that way it's not just solely the health teacher who might not feel, and I think we've had this discussion where, they might not feel like they're maybe the best expert to be able to share some of that. So how can they utilize the resources at their schools with, the social workers, the counselors, and the psychologists to take an opportunity to partner together to plan those lessons and deliver the lessons. I think it's a good point.
Assistants, they have evidence-based curriculum on vaping currently, don't they?
Yeah.
So they're already in our schools, we contract with
Who
them.
has the evidence?
The Rhode Island Student Assistant Services, we have the student assistance counselors in almost all of our middle and high schools.
Almost, yeah.
And so they, through grant funding, part of their role, probably speaks with this better than me, is to provide that tier 1 support. And a lot of them do partner with the social worker and the health teacher during like mental health awareness month. We had a lot of partnerships across the years, and they'll go in and help support those lessons.
One part of our program is PBS, the Prevention Ed series, which supports the health teachers curriculum. It's a 4-part program that our SACs, our student assistants, SACs are trained to do. It's an introduction to adolescence and their brain development, it's substance use, it's relationships, and it's stress management. So in a lot of the health programs, they are, in back in the day, they weren't as much in there. So we did a lot more, but now we work in tandem with other health teachers to either support or fill in where they want us to fill in. If they, like you were saying, not feeling that they have all the information about some of this, we can fill in the gaps.
Yeah, it's really cool to see the
Yeah, and we also have the
partnerships.
full good module.
The smart clinics, schools that have our smart clinics also have been doing a lot around vaping. They've been supporting and doing some school-wide just awareness and things. So that would have been Roger Williams. I'm not positive, I have to check back with Mount Pleasant, but I know Roger Williams last year did a lot around that because that was something that they noticed that the administration noticed that they were finding kids a lot with the vape pens and whatnot. It was an issue there. So they support that work there too, which was great. So it's never something we had in the curriculum before, but obviously we have to include now. So.
Yeah, next month is the mental health. Do you know if you're doing anything?
So we actually, I forgot what presentations we had scheduled.
I have Minding Your Minds.
Thank you.
SEL, informed trauma for school counselors, social workers, nurses, and school psychologists on May 17th. It's an optional PD Zoom presentation. And I asked all counselors, the specialists that work for me, I'm asking them to coordinate with the counselors at the schools to see what activities are going on for mental health awareness month.
And usually we report out to the committee on that in June after the month is over. That's what we did last year. We put like a very brief PowerPoint together and we presented some of the activities that were done. So usually in June, we report out to the committee what we've done for the med.
Is there any other questions? Without any question, moving into the next line item is that the presentation on social emotional learning and mental health for the fall school year review.
So Natalie Fleming, our director of SEL and mental health, will be presenting. We have, it's a very lengthy presentation, so we wanted you to have information, but she's not going to go through each of the slides because there's like 39. Natalie is always very comprehensive and she's all about more. So trying to get her to minimize this is her minimal. So.
Sandy, will these things even from
Just
your
a little bit of
like
like
digital
flyers.
Yes, so thank you, you read my mind, sorry. Yes, I didn't have the Dorcas, so I have to just scan that, and then this will go up there, yes. I have just a couple, I'm just gonna, because our things will just start apologize.
Oh, that's all right.
Do you mind if I just, our copy machine, so, but I am gonna put it up. Julie, do you have an extra one by any chance? I just don't have one here.
the original.
Sure.
Yes,
Just have the one.
Well, try
Yeah.
I gotta tell you that
All right, so I'll get started. The presentation itself wasn't loading as a slide deck, so just bear with me. Due to just my own capacity, there's a lot more words on here than I would have liked. I like showing visuals, but I will be with my team presenting this to the Parent University on May 25th with the FACE office, the Family Community Office. And at that point, there will be much less words by then and more interactive kind of discussion around the data. But I wanted to be able to at least kind of give you all the foundation and the background of what we're trying to kind of build out in a sense of really just redefining how we're measuring success for students when we think about social, emotional, and behavioral and mental health. We have, I'm a school psychologist by trade, and you're taught through the deficit model, right? We're taught to look at everything as what's wrong. What's wrong with this person? What's wrong? Why are they not learning? We are currently measuring using like absenteeism, number of suspensions, number of, I haven't heard detentions in a while, but detention, things like that. And so with the Department of Social Emotional Learning and Mental Health, one of the biggest goals is to develop a comprehensive system of how we are measuring success and wellness of our students. And so how do we do that is using the social emotional learning standards. So there's 5. There we go. There are 5 standards that RIDE and Providence actually adopted in 2017. And that was the purple or blue, depending on how you look at it, flyer that went around. That came out in 2017 in partnership with the Healthy Communities Office, where there was a campaign through the SEL subcommittee actually to adopt these standards and get them out to our parents, get them out into our schools. Let's start visualizing What are the components of social emotional learning, and how do we know when we're moving towards being able to recognize our emotions, identify them, do something positive with them, relate to others, make responsible decisions. There's a lot that goes into that. And as I think Rosemary was talking about the health curriculum, it's skills-based, right? So like really looking at these as skills that are taught and learned just like academic skills. And so this is just a lot of kind of words that say that we adopted these standards. We believe that these skills are the foundational skills for success in life and in learning. We cannot learn effectively if we are not able to manage emotions, if we're thinking about coming to a new country and I'm not really sure what's happening around me right now. I'm probably not going to be taking in the reading material that's being shown to me right now. So really kind of thinking about this as a holistic way of looking at students and then providing how do we actually measure this. This is from CASEL, which is the national organization that supports and really created social emotional learning standards. And this visual really demonstrates that these skills do not exist alone and within just the individual, that they are impacted by our classrooms, our schools, our families, our cultures, our communities. They really exist within this context, the ecosystem around them. And they're not learned on our own. They're learned from what we see, what we feel, what we hear, and what we learn as far as like how others react to us as well. This was supposed to be broken up, so we didn't get overwhelmed by it, but this is just to kind of give an example of one way to integrate the social emotional learning. What does it look like when it's within the context of learning? And this is not just students, so I like to say instead of students and adults, humans, because we all learn these things and we all have strengths and weaknesses and are still growing. So the top piece is an example of how you set expectations or values, right, within the learning context. So our learning context is professional learning. In this case, it's the school board committee meeting. For this, we're brave, responsible, compassionate. What does that look like to be brave within this setting? So taking positive risks and supporting others. That is an example of self-management. So the colors kind of match up to the different skills and standards. So you can see how you can integrate the social emotional skills into just universal supports and how when we all come together, what we expect from each other, and how we continue to grow those skills within each other and encourage them. We take ownership for harm we cause regardless of intent. So responsible decision making that also aligns to restorative practices. So lots of ways to kind of naturally integrate this into our natural settings. But again, giving a measurement, right? So like how do we actually measure success within this? And this is like too many words, so I'm gonna fly through, but just to give kind of a foundation of this all exists. So in the school, falling over things. I can't sit still. This all exists within a multi-tiered system of support. So this is really our ultimate goal is to how do we create a multi-tiered system of social emotional support, of mental health support, behavioral support, so that everybody gets what they need. And then a huge piece of this is the database decision making. This is really at the center. And somebody, I think it was the director of special education, said it's like our nervous system, which I loved, because it really is, it connects everything that we do. If we're not measuring, if we're not growing or understanding if we're growing or not, then we're really not doing much, right? So database decision making within the context of how are we looking at social emotional learning at a universal level? Is everybody getting what they need? Are the programs that we're using as the health curriculum, for instance, right, as a universal program, is it impacting our students in a way where they're growing their social emotional skills? And then at the higher tiers, using that for progress monitoring of our interventions and our more individualized interventions in supporting our students' social emotional learning skills. So really moving away from moving closer to skills-based versus behavior. So we're not looking at a student as are they good or are they bad, and are they a behavior. Even I think that word is starting to have a negative connotation, right? Did they behave well? There's a lot of different things that I think trigger me that didn't trigger me before. Just as you learn more about social emotional learning and mental health and wellness. And so trying to shift that to really looking at it as what skill might they be lagging? What is impacting their ability to enhance their self-awareness and self-management right now? What's impacting their ability to relate to somebody else right now? At all times, it's not just the individual, right? It's thinking of that context around that. So thinking of the individual skills as well as the context, this is a snapshot of the comprehensive screening and assessment system for social, emotional, and behavioral wellness that we're trying to create within this department. So not only measuring the individual student, but starting with, we call it the TFI, it's a school-based tiered fidelity inventory. And what that means is that we're measuring the system. We're measuring, do you have teams in place at your school? Do you have a universal tier 1 team? Do you have health curriculum and a social emotional learning support that are integrated into everything that you do? Do you have the right people? Do you have support staff who are on those teams? Do you have enough school psychologists, school counselors, school social workers, school nurses at your building to support that? Are you using database decision making to know if the programs and interventions you're using are working? So this is an actual measurement tool for teams and for principals and their leadership teams to measure those best practices of what a system looks like to support your ability to support students. The second piece is the social emotional behavioral universal screener. So currently we use what we call, some call the BIMUS, some call it BEMUS. It's Behavior Intervention Monitoring and Assessment System. This is really looking at, and I'll run through this as well. Every teacher has a class roster. So elementary, it's all of their students. At middle and high, they're assigned, they pick a period, and they complete the survey for every student that they have that period. It is a 35-item survey that the teacher completes on every single one of their students. It goes into a platform, and I'm going to show you the results of that in a second to let us know and get a pulse on where our students as a whole are functioning. And then we can kind of break that down. So it allows us to say, is our actual programming supporting all of our students instead of us just doing individual screeners and really pointing out individual students who may not be responding well. We also use the SECA. This is grades 5 to 12, so it's really measuring adolescent social emotional skills. This is a much shorter item. It's the students take it. So you have the teacher perspective here, and then you have the student's perspective of their skills with the SECA. And they just rate basically saying, like, this is easy for me, this is kind of easy, this is hard, this is really hard. So like, is it easy to make friends? And so the student would rate themselves on that. This is a SurveyMonkey link that was created by our data department, and it is also translated into Spanish, but that is the only other language that we currently have right now for that. And it also obviously requires you to have the ability to read the questions. We do have a script for teachers to make sure that they're monitoring and they're supporting students in the way that they need to be supported. However, there is definitely room for growth, for sure. The last one is the YES survey, Youth Experience Survey. This is grades 6 to 12, so adolescent mental behavioral health. This was completed every other year on opposite years of the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And through the City of Providence Healthy Communities Office uses the results of this survey to support community programming. And so this year we decided that we wanted to do it for all of our students instead of a sample so that we could actually use this data for ourselves because we have not in the past actually taken this data and said, hey, what does this look like for our schools and our students, and how can we use it to improve our schools in our classrooms. Typically, this is reported, like I said, to support the community and the state level programming. So we're excited to get this data back now and have it for our district as well. And this is going to look at protective factors, risk factors, substance use, different social determinants of health in the community. This is really long. I think it's 75 items for middle school and maybe like 80 something for high school students. Also, Ghost comes in Spanish, but it takes about 30 to 45 minutes for the student, and the students complete that. So it's a hefty one for sure. But this is what was sent out to all principals during that window, and then at the end of May, there will be an end of the year. We will be doing the BIMUS and the SECA again at the end of May, so we'll have end of the year data as well. Okay, so this is a lot of the stuff I already said, so I'm just going to run through, but this one is just specifically to give you a little bit more information on the BIMUS. So again, this is for our universal screener for social, emotional, and behavioral wellness of our students, completed by the teachers. It looks at 5 areas of social, emotional, behavioral health. So conduct, which sometimes we call external behaviors, so the behaviors that you can see. Negative affect, which is more of those internalizing behaviors. If a student has been looking very sad or isolated, not really interacting much. Cognitive and attention, that's like their executive functioning, if they're on task. Social skills, and then academic functioning. Academic functioning is not so much of if they're progressing in their literacy or their math, but more so what are their learning skills? Are they engaged in their learning? Are they asking for help? Are they struggling with homework? Different things like that. And then it also measures the 5 social emotional learning competencies. Just the logistic information I said, so 34 item screener, teachers completed about 3 to 5 minutes per student for the teacher. This is an example of some of the questions. The teachers rate never, rarely, sometimes, often, or very often. And the instructions are that they need to have observed this within the last 2 weeks. So this isn't like 3 months ago, I saw Sherry sleepy and tired. This is like within the last 2 weeks. What did you observe? The one thing, I love this because it allows our support staff and our teams to look at holistic data and to do something with it as a whole, as a team, to support their schools. The one thing that I think it falls short is that it is not straight-based. So kind of goes against everything I said earlier. But it's like appeared angry, right? So like just the way that it's worded, I think it does something that we've talked about as a team and we'll continue to talk about. Is how does that kind of set up the teacher right from the start of how they're reading the student. So they're automatically kind of looking at them through this deficit model, which is not what we're going for. So something that we're going to have to continue to look at as we build out an assessment system. We have used this for the past 5 years. So the nice thing about it is that we have some longitudinal data and we can look at history of results and if we are growing as a district in student social emotional learning skills. But again, we obviously want to continue to evaluate the tools that we're using. I'll quickly, on the BIMUS, it's question 24. It asks specifically about thoughts of hurting themselves. And so we do have a protocol in place. If a student, a teacher is filling this out, if a teacher has rated anything other than never, an alert goes to support staff and administrators, so you can set that up in the system. The purpose obviously is to make sure that we are doing risk assessment if needed right away within 24 hours. This is all trained on 2 weeks before we put this out. But just so you know, this is actually straight from like training slides. So if the teacher marks anything other than never, they have to confirm that they already reported to the school-based crisis team. So if they're marking that, you should already know who the student is. There really shouldn't be a time that you're marking that, and the student is in immediate crisis in front of you. But there has been over the years a lot more training and support around this. Many times it's marked by accident, and so we're running to make sure everything's okay, and then we have to delete the form and start over. However, if it's not by accident or just in any other case, we will alert the school crisis team and make sure that a safety evaluation is completed with the student. This is just a quick view of our suicide prevention protocol that our student support staff are trained on every single year. And we are starting to build out how do we make sure that we are training everyone every single year, not just support staff. But you would remain with the student, make sure that you are assessing for risk. We have a Columbia screener, and then based on the results of that, the students either an immediate risk, need to get immediate support. They are not in crisis, but they need some follow-up support, and we will make sure that we get that for them, or they're not in immediate danger, and we're going to make sure that we're monitoring that student and supporting them. All right, so results of the BINUS. These percentages here are demonstrating the high risk. So out of 5% here, nope, I'm lying, out of 100%, these are the percentage of our students district-wide who are showing concerns. Only 2.9% would have a concern district-wide for conduct, external behaviors, 3.2 for internalizing, 6.8 restriction, 32.8 for social functioning, and 31.9 for academic. The BINUS also gives us the 5 standards. So we're a little bit higher in those as far as like the concerns we have, with the largest concern here with relationship skills. Again, this is the teacher's perspective. This is, the colors are way off. We really need a new.
I know, we were just
This is
discussing
like the
that,
80s
sorry.
show here. So this is green, yellow, and red.
So far from the attention there, we're not sure what have to film that,
It's
sorry.
like the smoke colored.
Yeah, sorry.
But this is an example of the BINUS platform. So when the teacher completes the surveys, it generates these reports. So this is a district-wide. So you can see 16,865 students were assessed out of around 20,000 right now. So a really good response rate. Anyone, if you can see the colors, want to like notice anything that stands out to you? So I mean, there's a good portion of showing some solid skills, right?
It's pretty similar. As far as high risk concern.
Yeah, so the biggest, as we said, is that relationship skills. That was the most concern from the teacher's perspective.
I almost think, Natalie, it just came to me, we should probably check pre-pandemic post, although I keep saying post, but wherever we are currently, but
Yeah.
I'm just curious because I know that was something pre-pandemic.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, something post when we've come back that we have seen that has been a major challenge is, you know, especially our kiddos who are home, and who are now entering first or second grade, they didn't have that opportunity in K to really socialize. So I'm just curious what the, what the difference, if there is any, was, just because I know that's been a major issue, major concern of teachers lately.
How long, Natalie, have you been using this tool?
Long time.
2018.
So you just have three. That is-
Yeah, we have reports,
For a number of days, so.
that one of our amazing data specialists, who went out on maternity leave, and it's really excited about, did create reports, and so hopefully we can release them very soon.
Yeah, they're incredible.
But I just,
Yeah, I
wonder
wonder
about
about,
the breakdown of elementary and
yeah, that's.
You had asked
I know it's kind of hard to see, but we do have it there.
I'll find it for you. I do have, that info. Yeah, so this, I know this is really hard to see. So the biggest thing I think that stood out from this, and this is all from the report as well, is that once you hit like 7th, 8th, and 9th grade here, the percentages start to rise as far as the concern level. So like relationship skills in K, 27, 1, 22, 23, 27, 32, 30, 39, 46, 48, 50. And then they drop a little bit more in high school. So that transition to middle school is definitely showing across all of our measures, actually. That's been a consistent pattern. Is that transition?
There's probably a huge correlation with social media, just like that's the age that kids start using social media, middle school, high school, and then the relationship skills just kind of come down to that are on their screens.
Yeah, so a lot of these results too in the YES survey, which is looking more specifically at mental health, are pretty consistent with national findings as well. Specifically, I'll just jump at the girls. There's a huge discrepancy between girls and boys as far as them reporting it themselves. As far as the discrepancy that they're reporting less resiliency and feelings of wellness than the boys. And it's hard not to think about that in social media and self-image and how many likes do I get versus the others.
Just wondering if you're following, and I don't know what they're doing for data collection, the Nathaniel Green pilot project with the Yonder pouches with cell phone policy, so they don't have them during the day, which I know I spent some time over there prior to when they were investigating it, and really, I was in the cafeteria, and it was amazing. I noticed immediately nobody was talking to each other, and they were hardly eating because they all were just watching videos on their phone, and that's what the health teacher was saying. They have been coming back from the pandemic. We need them to be talking to each other, to have those, to build those relationship skills, and so that, I guess, was part of the reason, not just the distraction in an academic setting in the classroom, but also to have more of that, interaction even with students and adults and students. So I just didn't know if that's kind of an interesting.
It's been game changing over there. In fact, the assistant principal just came and spoke, was it 2 or 3 months ago, or maybe 2 months ago, at the school board meeting, just to kind of give an update, because they had, asked, they just implemented it this year. And I also had been there to the school. She also asked me to go, and you're right, everybody was on their device, but all the teachers and a lot of other schools now want to have the same thing, and purchase the same, device. Yeah, it was, a great concept. And so, you're right, I think that's been one of the things, like, they feel like they're actually having conversations with each other, which, seems a natural thing, but, so they definitely have cut down on.
Yeah, and even anecdotally, and again, this is just anecdotally because I don't know, I have been asking from Yonder what they were doing for assessment, and even self-reported that they've just been hearing anecdotally. Some students have been saying, phew, I just am no longer stressed worrying about did this person send me this text, or I'm trying to see what's happening, you know, did I get, it just has created kind of a calmer space for them. They said they felt better not having that.
We'll be curious to see when they
Yeah.
do their
Yeah.
Primus
Well, so
this
that,
spring.
well, or, you know, right?
Yeah.
You guys are really good at it. So what's interesting in that is students' perception of relationship skills. And so the SECA is what is used to gauge that. And so the students complete this survey. It's 17 items. It's like 5 to 10 minutes. This is 5th grade through 12th grade. And these are the questions. Self-awareness, so knowing what my strengths are. So again, they're gonna rate, like, this is very easy for me. This is easy, this is kind of hard, this is really hard. So respecting a classmate's opinions, sharing disagreements, getting along with my classmates. This was actually created with students as well, in Washoe County, Wisconsin, and with Castle. And was one of the reasons we had a fellow from Toronto who actually did a lot of research. That's why we utilize this, because it aligns, the item analysis aligns much closer to the social emotional standards themselves than the BIMUS actually does. And the students were actively engaged in creating this as well as what do I feel like actually measures this for me. So kind of cool. But the interesting part is that they actually rated relationship skills as their highest area. And so,
But I'm not surprised, like, that's all they think they're there to do in school is to socialize.
but also their perception of social media, it's interesting because they do feel like they are relating. That is their way of relating. And again, I'm not going to generalize, but just from some of the results and speaking, that they actually feel that they're connecting more through their phones. But sorry, it's only based on these 2 questions for relationships? Yes,
Okay.
yes. But just as like anecdotal kind of pieces after the fact, but yeah, for sure. And then the area of most need for them was self-management. So that was, so getting through something even when I feel frustrated, being patient even when I'm really excited. And then schoolwork, doing my schoolwork even when I do not feel like it, and being prepared for tests. Yeah. This was kind of just the breakdown of the questions themselves. And so the easiest here was knowing what people may be feeling by the look on their face, knowing when someone needs help. That's interesting. That's where they rated themselves highest. The lowest was getting through something, even when I'm frustrated. Finishing tasks, they're hard. Doing my schoolwork when I don't feel like it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should know this, but the BIMUS first, do they align or do they not align?
So they're both measuring the social emotional learning standards. There is a teacher perspective versus a student perspective. So we do have measures of that. When you look at the research, the SECA aligns more consistently with the, as far as measuring.
Questions are not really aligned.
Or the questions are not the same. No. They are aligned, but they're not the same.
Yep.
So like is completing, like Sally is completing her schoolwork consistently. Never, sometimes often, that would be like the teachers. Great. And then the final one was the yes survey. This again has been going on since 2012, every other year. So this was the 5th administration of this survey, but the first time that we have gotten a sample of all 6 through 12 students. Again, it was during one of their classes. The teachers provided them a link and gave them instructions and support them through that. Some of the areas for protective factor, so school experience, 36% of middle school, 32% of high schools indicated they enjoy being in school. 73% middle schoolers, 70% of high schoolers said that they try to do their best to work in school. 61% of middle school students reported feeling safe, and 73% of high schoolers. So there was definitely that pattern of middle school feeling less feelings of wellness consistently and resilience, and also just enjoyment in school. The trusted adult, so one of the number one protective factors for mental health is having at least one adult who you feel like you can trust or go to. And so this was 78.4% in middle school and 76.2% in high school. So it's nice to see, but I feel like we could still do better with that. That's a big thing. We were actually just talking about that at one of our steering committees of like what interventions to look at, and somebody said like greeting, like just greeting somebody when they walk in, those school counselors, and how powerful that is. If like that was our intervention for the year, if every single person just like greeted somebody by name, adult and student, and then to start measuring kind of the impact of that and how you feel. Kind of something random thought, but self-management skills. This again came out as kind of the area that students want like more support with. I know how to relax when I feel tense. Only 57% of middle schoolers and 65% of high schoolers. So that kind of goes right back to that skills-based health curriculum and social emotional learning instruction. Something easy that we can help teach students throughout the day and model for ourselves as well. I know how to calm down when I'm feeling nervous. 58.5% middle schoolers said yes, 63% high schoolers said yes. 36% of students in both middle school and high school indicated that they hate being in school. So something to definitely consider and work towards as far as culture and climate. And then this is just kind of overall, summing it all up. Our school leadership teams have reported out that they do have behavioral expectations in their schools, but they do not meet consistently as a team to use data-based decision-making consistently and effectively. And so that is definitely an area at the systems level that we want to support and help build that district vision of culture and climate and school-wide expectations, and how are we all reinforcing and modeling those. For the BINUS, the relationship skills related by the, perceived by the teachers was the biggest area of need. The biggest area of strength. Thank you. And then, no, I'm lying again. I'm getting twisted. The teacher's perception as relationship skills was the biggest area of need. The students was that was their biggest area of strength. There we go. I'm getting tired. Let's see, and then the yes. Just a little bit more demographic information. I know this is a lot of words. But basically, middle school and high school students reported similar perceptions of risk and protective factors, but the high school students scored higher on overall well-being. So we're definitely seeing that kind of dip in middle school, and it's nice that it's kind of starting to feel a little bit more of wellness in high school, but some growth to be made. Girls and boys, this is what we were going to get into before. The girls' mental health is more than half the standard deviation lower than boys. So that's a lot of data language, but basically that is there's a huge discrepancy there as far as what the girls and the boys are reporting in their feeling of just overall wellness. Those identifying as neither girls nor boys, so they mark other or prefer not to say. This was a smaller group, but they generally ranked lower on protective factors and higher on risk factors. Mental health and resilience especially low. And then reports of bullying was high, so we're still seeing that pattern, unfortunately. And then racial patterns weren't quite as stark, but Asian students ranked lower than other races on mental health and resilience, but higher in peer risk behaviors, so less likely to engage in risky behaviors. Black students scored less favorably on risky behaviors. So reported that they are engaging in a higher number of risky behaviors. And then white students ranked higher than other groups on growth mindset and parental engagement. And the reports breaks this down a lot more with a lot more visuals as well. And so hopefully by the next meeting, we can have those up for you. I just threw in a couple of ways that the schools are using this information and how we're trying to build district team to coach and support. And so the idea is to help them build kind of essential teams at each of their buildings. With school leadership teams really looking at that tier one. So what can we do for all students? What is the data telling us? Is our programming working? What do we need to improve on? At that grade level, department teams, really looking at the targeted students and your classroom in particular, your department in particular, what does that look like? Where are we kind of really reaching the students? And where are the areas of differentiated instruction or tier two support? Student support teams is a big area to look at those more intensive support. So when we look at those who's reporting at that risk level, so that top of the triangle, who are those actual students, and let's make sure we're checking in with them and seeing what other data we have to make sure the supports are in place to move that down. We want to pump up the green is what some folks say. And then we have our special education teams that also will need to use data to ensure that the specialized instruction they're receiving is actually supporting their growth I won't be able to, but it was just templates to show you it's a data template to help teams walk through the data and what questions they can ask to build some goals for their predictions. I don't know if I get that.
Nope, you're fine. I'm trying to get back here. Back to the presentation or?
That's right, I talked too much anyways. I think we're good. Does anyone have any questions?
So it seems like that, Natalie, you logged me out of that, I don't know why you're on there.
You're signed out.
Oh, okay.
Also, can the secondary team, like, or middle school team take this, into consideration in the health, like maybe self-image, like focusing on self-image or something in there?
So this is how to ask you first to actually get this great information. So the next step is to share this with schools, but we have to help them. So kind of how Natalie took you through, like, one, why is it that we do this? What's the information? What's the purpose? Who completes it? And then get into the data. So we're sharing that with all of you first, but the goal is to then share it with schools. So that way this can be used as one data point in helping schools make their determination of, where they want to move forward with maybe like, professional development or, very specific things at their school other than the district, how we're utilizing this to make decisions, but also at the school level, knowing this, what are some things that you might want to do or implement at your school. So.
But they don't get school-based data. They get it
So
for their school,
yeah,
or you
so
able
when
to-
they
Yes,
do,
they do.
they do get that,
They
so
do.
that's important. So like, for example, I'll talk through it when I was a principal. When I was a principal, part of the thing, part of the role that I used to do is after our BIMIS was done, as I would review that data to see, what was the perspective because remember the teachers are the ones who are filling that out for students, and a lot of times there were discrepancies in that, so we would have discussions. We also would use it to know what to target, so we would do an SEL. Part of the work that we did at my building was around SEL work, so that was used to determine like what our competency, because every year we would work on a particular competency as our focus and do activities with the kids all year, to really encourage that. So we would use that data to determine what's going to be our competency for the next year. So if we were doing self-management this year, what would it be, would it be social awareness or whatnot for the following year? So that was all really important data. I don't know if every principal gets down to that, level. To be quite honest, there's so much. So we really are using it. I think we can use it better too at the district level. And I think the teams Natalie talked about, and at the next presentation, Julie will be doing a little something around MTSS with you all. And I think this is where this data will be really important, is helping those teams utilize, that.
That's my question. So this is really interesting, and I love that will the teachers get some of this as well? Will they get some, or who do you present the information to?
So usually, that's a good question.
Well, the BIMUS is the platform the BIMUS is down to the individual student. So you can get individual student data, you can get classroom, and you can get school and then district. So the teachers have a login, and they can log in and they can, the chart, the triangle chart, the teachers have that for their class. And then the principal, you can pull it up for your school, and then we can pull it up for the district. And so that allows us to look at all levels, because it is completed at the individual student level, and then the teacher can utilize that to understand.
So they're familiar with this. It's new for me.
That
So
one,
your
yes.
presentation was so good and comprehensive, and I'm sure it's even better when you get to saw your slides.
But it's an area that that's the only data that they have access to right now. So the SECA is a survey that we have.
This information, who gets your presentation?
You all.
So you're all getting it first. So I think something that Natalie and I have talked about prior to when she was part of the Project Ride is I don't know if we utilize this as much as we should. It's very comprehensive. It's great data, and we have a lot of different sources, right? Like we have the teacher's perspective, we have the kids' perspective. I think it's really good to triangulate and look, because we just don't always want to look at one piece, right? So it's kind of great. And then we also have part of SurveyWorks too, which asks a lot of questions around. So I think we have a lot of great, really good pieces. I think what we need to do is now come up with a plan on how to share it. So I think like one of them is, sharing this with executive cabinet. I've been including it in some of my rollouts with the cabinet of, to get them to start looking at it. So I think, the next step is really thinking about, now that we have this and we've just got a great report that, was put together for us, how do we want to share that? So I think like with all of you, it made sense to roll, start here. It makes sense with, FACE, with parents, so they can also, because we're getting a lot of questions about like, what are you seeing at the school level? So I think Natalie is going to be doing something with them here at university. And then how do we trickle it down with leaders? So that way leaders understand and are able to then turn it around at their schools. Yeah, I think that's the kind of progression we have to go through. And then also with our own support team too, like at this, all of our social workers, psychologists, counselors, like, have everybody, our nurses, like having everyone together to, hear the information. I think right now, for a number of years, it's been, this is something we do, but we really want to change the narrative. It's not just something we do, but how do we use it to influence and change, just like any good data, right? Like anywhere it's academic data that we're looking, like the point of doing it is to learn from it, and then how do we, move forward. So I think that's where we're at in full transparency. I think we're trying to support schools in understanding what this needs and how they can use it to make some decisions. But for right now, we're using it more at the district level in helping us determine like what are some additional supports that we need to put into place. What are some, possible additional programs that we might need to put into place at the district level. So I don't think it's, trickled down as much to schools unless you are a school that really utilizes this often, and maybe the support team at the school supports with that. I just don't think that most of the schools utilize it in the way that they could. But in all fairness, we haven't supported them through that either, so.
And how about the school improvement teams, because that would include.
Yeah, so that would be part of it, like it would be, so we have like, what they call the leadership teams. So at the school, district leadership teams, like how to utilize this. Like I said, some schools incorporate it, already, but not every school, I think, fully understands. Because part of this work, Natalie spent a big portion of it explaining to you about the competencies. And we also need to explain that also, to leaders so they understand what each of those, are.
I think we're still in that phase though too of like, it's beginning to be a priority, and I think that's the silver lining of COVID, it like actually exists now.
Yeah.
But I think just at the national, state, and at the district level too, like this isn't a requirement. Like doing universal screening for social, emotional, and behavioral wellness is not a requirement like it is for academics. So it doesn't have the money and the data behind it, right? Yeah, it's starting to. It's starting to, but I think it's kind of been in competition with like academics instead of seeing it as like a holistic view of the student.
Whole child, you have to look at it, you're not gonna be able to.
And that's what when Julie presents next month about MTSS, you'll start to see that is really more of the approach that we want schools to take is versus silo, now I know talks, that there's a lot of silo, like there's a tendency, right? And starting to really bring all those teams and form one team and looking at the child holistic. I think another thing also we're also starting to do is, as part of the MTSS, including this data as their piece. So just like you would do it for academics, you would look at the style, the child, like whatever the test was that they did, kind of using this to help lead those conversations. And we just are going to be implementing some behavior interventionists in schools. And so Natalie has, showed them this because this will be a big piece in determining, who will they be working with and whatnot. And at the district level, using this data to help us to determine which schools really need. Every school will eventually receive one, but who are our schools that, really need one now? And then helping to match their skills to what the assessments are telling us. So like I said, we're using this a lot right now at the district level, but hasn't so much trickled. But with the MTSS, I do think as part of that process, that is going to have to be data sets that they have to look at when, students come up and, have some, they come up for, behavior concerns and whatnot. This will be something they'll have to look at and utilize. So.
And then Natalie, when you're doing the parent presentation for the phase, the parent university, will you have, I'm just wondering, because if you give them data and you're, showing to them that a large percentage are having, relationship issues, or they're, or that the teachers are seeing that, if you're presenting pretty much what we saw, right? It sounds this. Are you giving them any strategies or any, like, just tips? Or also resources where they could go, or how to, is that going to be part of it at the end?
Yeah, I think that maybe a follow-up, but more so of just like engaging like our community and our hopefully students too, like in data conversations, right? Like we don't include them in like, what do you notice and what do you think? So I think it's more like the title is like, show me the data, I think is the title of it. And so presenting it in a much more visual way and much more strength-based. I feel like I still was more negative than I would want to be. But I think it's more about just presenting the data and opening it up for discussion to see what others think, not just what I think. So, and giving a space for students and families and teachers if they show up as well, to just like have it be a little bit more informal of like, here's the data, let's talk about it. What do you notice? And kind of walk through I wish I could have popped up, but like a protocol of just like prompts, right? So like, here's the data, and then just prompts and trying to generate conversation around it to see what that might look like.
because we don't typically
I
do that
think it's
often.
kind of twofold with FACE, it's awareness, helping them become, aware. And then the second part is, how can I support at home as a parent? So I'll give you an example. I was just talking to FACE yesterday about having some awareness around like just vaping in general. For families, like, this is, what it is, showing some data around it, but then, what are some signs, that you should be looking for? If you do have concerns, what are some things, that you can do at home? What are some resources we can connect you with? So it's kind of doing the two pieces, I think. It's the awareness, but then also, so now I'm aware, what do I do? If this, is something that I'm concerned about for my child, who do I seek help from? And last week at a PAC meeting, which is part of the parent group, one of the feedback that they shared was they don't always know who to go to in the building for what, and how to navigate that. So helping them to understand like who to go to for what at the building, I think is something that we need to help families with, because there are a lot of people at the buildings. Thank goodness, there's a lot of great help, but it's helping them shift of, I have a question, who do I go to, who's the right person to ask, and helping them kind of navigate that. So that's kind of where, where we're at right now to, help them to see. And there are some families that just, don't feel comfortable coming, so helping them to understand, like, this is what we're here for. We're here to support you. Please come to us. And so it's a work in progress. But this is the first, since last year, was it last, Gina, when did we start with Happy Office? Was it last fall? No, I'm sorry, late. It was late winter, SCL Mental Health. Late, and then Natalie came on spring, yeah. So it's a fairly new office also for the district too. So we're still, building it out, and we're still growing it, because there's a need there, definitely a need. So I think as we're building it.
Well, that was a great presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm so wordy.
Oh, it's so interesting and valuable.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's exciting to hear you talk about it, because you've told us about the measures for a while, but I haven't seen them in action. So I just had two quick thoughts. One was, you said it kind of offhandedly in the presentation about like welcoming people into the school and like seeing if that had an impact. But I actually think that's an amazing example of what you were just saying, Cindy, of like taking something that the school decides it wants to do as an intervention and then using data to say, is this working or not? And so it doesn't have to be that particular thing. Maybe it's whatever the school wants to choose, but that I would just, maybe raise that up as a suggestion of like, what if every school in the district, we just said, you get to pick what thing is that you want to do, but it has to be about school culture and social emotional learning, and then use this data to, like, what was it at the beginning, and then after you did the thing, like, did it change it or not? That in medicine, we call those plan, do, study, act, or quality improvement, but it's like got different names in different sectors. So, but I think keeping it simple is the key, right? So like if it's really complicated, or you're asking people to like change the whole thing, it's not gonna happen. So that's just one suggestion. But the other one was for Parent University, like having gone to a lot of them and presented at them and helped others do prepare for them. I will say that they're amazing, but they're also kind of challenging because you've got people from all over the spectrum of their like knowledge and understanding, and you've got Spanish-speaking folks, or like there's translation happening. So like I think again, kind of like the QI thing, it's like less is more. I know you know that, but to Sandy's point, I think like even just justifying like why are we even talking about this is going to be important, because so many times these people will be like, why are we even talking about this? I want to talk about this other thing, and they're like, well, that's not really why we're here. And Janet's really good at like redirecting that, but I think, just be prepared for people not really knowing why social emotional learning is important. So I think it's important to lay that groundwork, as I'm sure you would. And I was gonna say, just this, because this came up for me on a recent parent university. I was on a panel with the equity folks, and there were trolls. There were people who came and trolled us. It was about gender, and I would just be prepared for that. Even though like we all in this room
You
are
make
like,
me want to go
"Yeah,
get
social
wine.
emotional learning."
Did you bring wine after?
Right, I did. I had a debrief. We had to have like a debrief session after. It was not pleasant. And so I just want to put that out there, because I think there are people who get the links.
Yeah.
And they're like, these people are trying to like change our kids' minds or something. There's just like weirdos out there. So I just want to be, want to just give you that heads up and say it may be worth talking with Janet just about like how the thing is structured. For example, like we didn't have the right settings on our Zoom, so like people in the thing could see the chat, and it was just, it went a little bit off the rails. So even though I love Parent University, it's like one of my favorite things that we do as a district, as you all do. But I also think it's good to go into it sort of like prepared for some of the challenging dynamics, of like having the Zoom where there's like lots of folks, and you're trying to, figure out. So I think going into knowing what your goals are and keeping it simple is helpful.
That's good feedback.
Yeah.
They don't do them in webinar mode?
You do.
Well, yes,
Yes.
but
But they,
turns out there's lots of settings,
Okay, yeah.
even in webinar mode. So
I went to
Yeah.
classes when I had to do a big one with like 800 people. I'm scared to death on how to manage it all without like the tech or anything. And I went to all these classes to make sure that all the settings are right.
I have not gone to those classes.
They have
Janet's really good about it too. Janet does.
tutorials, but I'm sure she'll help. But that is because that can happen. And it's
yeah. And she's great at stuff. I'm not trying to throw Janet on the bus. She
No,
does an
no,
amazing job, but I think it just goes to show that even when you've done it a bunch of times, and you have all the settings in place, like somebody might try to disrupt the session. Not even necessarily like a troll, but just somebody who's kind of like, what about my kid who's like at this
But
school
they have
and
a
they
chat
want this
open,
thing.
because I would say, do the instead do the Q&A, and someone will monitor that and then
Yes.
read the questions,
Yeah.
particularly when it's
They
something
do.
that.
Her team, I did it last month, and I'd done it the year before.
They do.
I mean, I don't like not seeing people.
It's
So
hard to
that's
present
my-
to that.
I'd rather
Yeah.
have that interaction, but I understand,
Yeah.
then.
And then people who don't understand, I think that's impossible with a big, because you're like, could someone, you're hearing like the background of something going on, because someone doesn't understand to turn their mic off, and then, there are all those issues when you do it as a meeting, I think, rather than in webinar mode. I get it, it's very hard for a presenter to present to kind of.
And plus, part of it is building that connection. I mean, we all know I feel like very about relationships and with, especially with our families. And I feel like a lot of them already feel that disconnect. So when it's just, for me, I just think it's so impersonal. Like Jenna, like I want to see families. I want to be able to have that connection. I want to be able to see faces so I can connect. And so it's hard to do that when it's a webinar, especially when you're talking about, like there's some very, stuff, that is, shared here. And, and so it's kind of hard. Sometimes it makes it a little bit colder when you're doing it that way. But I mean, it is what it is. I want to honor everyone's time. It's almost 7:30. I just want to share. So thank you, Natalie, for presenting.
I just have one question.
Sure.
Natalie, on the question 24, it states that if it's marked as, this behavior was exhibited in the past week, an email would be automatically generated by the vendor and sent to all finest administrators in the building.
Yeah,
And district level personnel, so what is, having lost my first one nephew to suicide, right after he graduated from high school, what's the response time for somebody answering those kind of questions that seriously?
Yeah, it's immediate, so that's why that's set up. And so before, like at the district level, when you're setting up administration, you go in for every school, so the principal tells you who the coordinator is, who the teacher is, and so they set up that it'll work, we go to every principal, the assistant principals, school psychologists, school social workers. No school counselors are on that unless they are indicated by somebody, if there's like a vacancy in the building or something. So there is always a support staff and an administrator, who is on it's set up right in the system for every single school who gets alerted. And the minute that the teacher hits anything other than never on that question, an email goes out. It also goes out to the district, administrators too. And so when we first started doing this, in 2018 or so, there was a lot of those because the teachers would read it in a way that was, well, sometimes they would, they would want to do the work or something and they make this comment, and so kind of doing it in that sense. But yes, that is set up, and his name is Achilles, who created this Boston schools who has utilized Dynamics as well. He's very, very sensitive to that and ensures that there are pieces around that. We actually talked about, obviously, a lot about liability for that, because one of our biggest concerns when we first started is having the ability to respond. And that we need to ensure that we could respond if that alert went out instantly, and we don't have the supports that we're getting there to ratio, right? So every school did staff was fully, and so we went back and forth, but that was the policies and the processes that went in place. And so a teacher, somebody will go to that teacher, and within 24 hours is like the absolute last minute, but it is the minute you get that alert, and you see then somebody is going to check in with that teacher to say, hey, did you do that on purpose? What's going on? And or you already know the student and you have already done the assessment. They might be somebody that you have a support plan with. You might talk, but the support staff would do the risk assessment of that student, contact the parent, and make sure that they have the support they needed if it is a concern.
Thank you.
We also actually have, you have to fill out a form every time you respond. So everyone has a Google folder and a form for every school, and the staff who is assigned to responding have to fill out every time somebody has marked that question other than ever and what the response was.
And most of the time, the teachers, like Natalie said, so a lot of times when as an administrator, I would get that, I would look at the teachers and say, really, you think that, I don't see evidence of that. So you have to, talk that through with me. And a lot of times they were like, oh my God, I didn't mean it to answer like that. Yeah. And so the parts where it would become challenging is if they would be filling it out at home at night or over the weekend, and then you got the alert, because I check my email and I get the alert, I'm like, oh my God, now it's on a Sunday, and that's on your mind, great. So I'd have to contact the teacher, have a conversation with her, and check, and see if there was any major calls, parent, if you needed to, if they did feel like there was, calling the parent and alerting them so that they're aware. And then after that, it became let's talk about this as a group and norm around what is this asking us? How do we respond? Because then you would start to see some teachers who were responding to it more often than others. So then it was, because I would see it come through. So as a building principal in the beginning, I think people just didn't know. So we were seeing it more, whereas I feel like now it's not as much. I think now everyone pretty much. Yeah.
Well, the expectation is you should, if you're marking that, I should already
Yeah, 'cause I know
that
that.
that student's at risk, and I've already met with them.
Right.
Yeah, and connected them to yeah.
That just jumped out at me, this level of urgency.
Yeah.
Well, we have high levels of urgency around it just in general. I mean, the amounts of suicide ideation that we're having is really high. I think I mentioned this last time. That's why we've had to do a whole training with the principals to help support, because our staff can't, keep up with all of, the screeners. Sadly.
And on the other side of that, I think the reason we didn't shy away from it is because we do have to normalize it.
Yeah.
We have to normalize that the teacher can speak to that and not feel like she or he or they cannot, that's not my job, right? So it's like reducing that stigma that, people do have those feelings and those thoughts sometimes, and everybody can ask that question. So that's another part of, making it normal and okay that you're feeling that way, that I'm going to support you. So it's a difficult conversation, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
Just for next month, I just want to make sure before I forget. So next month we have 2 presentations. We have Natalie and I think Gina. The first Natalie. I'm sorry, Natalie and Nikki, I apologize. Natalie, Project Aware grant and school-based mental health, because we have a lot of initiatives that have been under that, so I wanted to make sure the school really understood that. And then Julie will also be sharing a little bit about the MTSS. This was a little preview of it, but I think it'll be, again, you'll be hot off the press. You'll be the first group to be getting all this cutting edge stuff. So that will be next month here again. The team will be leading. I won't be here. I'll be away that week. So the team will be leading those conversations.
Yeah, if you just can send me the permissions, and then we can schedule meetings.
I've already given Chiara that agenda that you approved, so it's all set.
I can do it for you and I can just send it to you so you can look at it. I was good. That would help. And
The only other question I have is in regards to the assessments. They look like they're all computerized. If it's a student question here, is it an option for them to do with the paper and pencil model, or is they trying to go away from that completely?
Yeah, that's a good, no, so no, I guess that's the short answer. I think the challenging part with the paper pencil is just the data collection part of being able to generate the results and utilize it. So, but I think that there is definitely room for growth of looking to make sure it's accessible, and like what are we doing to make sure that we're getting the feedback from all students regardless of.
But it's happening in class too, right?
It's happening in class, yep. So so the teacher one and the teacher filled that out. The student surveys are happening during the class period, and so with the teacher monitoring it, sure they would either way. And it's a Survey Monkey link that was created by our data specialist, and so that's definitely kind of going back to how we use it. We don't have the capacity right now to really put it together and use it and get it back out in the way that is helpful. So we're moving and trying to build that capacity as we go. But that would be interesting to kind of hear feedback from. We have not done that at a district. Some of the schools do of let's just debrief on how this went and how did students take this or not take this, or what was hard or what went well. That's something we haven't done at
It's the stamina that's the biggest piece. Because for some of them, it's 45 minutes to an hour to answer everything. And I think for them, it's not so much the taking it on the computer, it's the stamina in order to get through the whole
The
test.
big one, yeah.
The big one
The
is.
second one's quick.
Yeah, that's the one that's the tricky part. And even as the teachers, it's a lot of questions they have to answer. And if I'm a teacher of elementary, 26 kids, I gotta take it 26 times. I have to do it 26 times. So that I think is the other piece. It's being able to chunk it. You can't just sit in one sitting and do the whole thing. You have to do. I tell teachers, try to do 5 a day, and that way you can be really thoughtful when you're answering it, not just lose steep towards the end, so.
Is it like a must answer or can you skip? So you can choose not to, the students can choose not to take it also, so like skip, but.
And the parents, two parents can opt
I
out,
don't-
the child
I
taking
don't-
it too.
I don't think so. Because I feel like when she was doing kind of the error analysis, that would have come up. I think you have to click them, but that's not to say that the student is just clicking the click and get it over with.
Probably towards the end, I would guess
but
they
she-
start to
yeah.
do this,
But that's where like the data specialist comes in, because she was really good right now, but this was not really her job. But she went through and like looked at patterns, and so if there was like item like 15, like there was lots of C's, like if somebody answered C on all of it, like she went through and did like an error analysis and to see, to kind of show some of those things, like how many kids do I think just like clicked all C's all the way down, or like what's valid versus what's not.
One thing I was going to say earlier to back off what you were saying about the grading people is, like, I know using it pre-post is great, the data, but also using it as a needs assessment almost of what the school, individual schools could be doing, and maybe from that baseline data, having kind of like a drop-down menu of like, hey, if you want to work in this section, like, these are some ideas that you might want. So it doesn't put so much burden on the principal to come up with ideas, but they might be simple things that they can choose that, then when you look at the post data, you can see if that's made a difference, but not making it be like, all right, world's your oyster, good luck, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, if you have any interns or students who want to do this work,
Yeah.
It's just, it's like,
Just do one more thing.
yeah. I would love to do this all day long. But this can be used for progress monitoring, so like if you can print it out, right, if it's counselor or school psychology services workers working with a student or kids, they could print it out and use it as kind of like a weekly or like in 6 weeks, right? Where are you kind of now? You can do that with the Vimus as well. So there is a student survey on the Vimus and a parent version. We just don't have the capacity to use all of those functions. So the students could fill that out, and the reason we haven't done the student one in the past is because of that question 24 too, going back to our capacity to respond. So we can respond to the teacher filling out on 26, but then when 15,000 students and say they mark it, like we gotta respond, and we have the ability to respond, and if we don't, like that opens up a whole lot of other pieces.
And what would be the length of the Vimus? So I don't have it in front of me, but the student one that you're using now is the
17.
lengthy one.
No,
What's
the
the
student-
advantage
so-
of using that one rather
Yeah.
than a line Vimus one?
Well, the reason we liked the other one was that because it was created by students and it was shorter for the students themselves.
Are you talking about kind of like how long, it's like, the average, what my teachers used to do, average was about 20 minutes per child for the Vimus. If it was a student.
I was wondering if
No,
the
because they used to
student-
have, no, now
When
they
they
start
first
to
started
really,
doing it.
yeah, they have
Yeah.
to really think about like how they're responding to it. Especially if it's a kiddo that had some challenging behaviors, it would take them, if it was someone they weren't as concerned with, yeah, it would go quicker. But someone they were really concerned with would take at least 20 minutes per child, so.
Yeah, the
Hopefully
second
that
is
they would be involved.
17 questions. The Vimus is like 34. I
Yeah,
think.
that's what I'm saying, that it's.
But what was the last one, student one?
The student one is 17
This
questions.
one is the yes.
Oh, that is every other, yeah, that one was 75 questions
Right.
from the student.
But what would be the, like Kelly had asked, are they aligned, the student and the teacher one? Instead of doing that one, I don't know, doing the Vimus for students, so that you have the
Yeah,
same
the Vimus
data
is
set.
double the questions for the students. And it also asks, honestly, the biggest piece was that question of,
Yeah,
are you thinking of harming yourself, and our ability to respond to 20,000 students. not that 20,000 students would warrant that, but there's a learning curve with how
And does it have to be you there? I'm sorry.
We've
going down
got-
a rabbit hole, but.
yeah, there's no way to, we went through all of that. There's no way to remove it. I think the biggest thing is now, like, the first step was like, how do we organize like all the things that we are using into one system? And now we can then look at it and say like, is this even the best tools for us? Because we've never done that. We've never had the ability to really come around as a department, have this department to look at that. So Bimus might not be the best one for us. And do we want to use like just the SECA? I mean, I think it's nice to have the teacher perspective versus the student perspective. There are other more strength-based items out there. The DESA, I think AmeriCorps uses the DESA too. But we do have an RFP out, well, that's done with a new data system that can hopefully do all of these things in one place. So it's hard because we've used the Bimus for so long. So we have like the historical data, but I also don't love that it's not strength-based either.
And it is long, that's a lot of questions
And it is
for
long.
one teacher to do for 26 kids, it's long. Yeah, so we need to find something that is condensed, but can give us the same information. So that way, for the teachers, it's not something so comprehensive. And then it also takes a while to gather all the data into this kind of a reporting system for us to be, so it's taken us a while. So hopefully something that's a little more streamlined using a platform that can help do it will make it a lot easier. So for the quick turnaround to be able to really help principals, because now it's a little old, so.
Is there any other question from board members or second?
Not at this time.
The next actional item is to adjourn the meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second, meeting adjourned.
Thank you for that presentation.
Thank you so much. Natalie, thank you so much. I'm gonna get in touch.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, you can make it.
We resigned for you.
To